Jesus, the King of the Jews, the Son of God, and the Messiah. His entrance and exit in the biblical narrative begin in Matthew and end in John, both books from the New Testament. It is through him that people can receive salvation, and it is he who is the central figure of the Christian faith. The heart of the Christian belief seems to be nestled safely in the New Testament, so it is not surprising that many believe that studying the Old Testament is unnecessary. Often referred to as the Jewish scriptures in Judaism, the Old Testament is vital in setting the foundation for the gospel. Furthermore, the history of God's interactions with mankind give Christians a better understanding of God's character. Some believe that the Old Testament paints the God of Israel to be angry and full of wrath. However, when you read the scriptures through an exegetical lens with hermeneutic understanding, the Old Testament shows the glorious redemptive power of God on a quest to be reunited with humankind. Several times throughout the Old Testament, the Lord uses the method of covenant to extend the invitation of relationship to his people. Some of the most well-known covenants that God makes in the Old Testament were those with Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and David. Today we are going to focus on 3 covenants found in the Pentateuch, analyze their characteristics, and discover who God is as the covenant maker. The first covenant that we will discuss is the one that God made with Noah. In the beginning of Genesis, God created the world and commissioned Adam and Eve to increase in number and subdue the earth. A little more than 1,600 years later, however, humanity began to descend into chaos. The Lord saw the evil within the hearts of man and regretted their creation. So the Lord said, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret I have made them." But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. God instructed Noah to build an ark and invite 2 of every kind of animal into it. The flood rains lasted 40 days, but according to Genesis 7:24, the water prevailed on the earth for 150 days. When the flood subsided, God told Noah to leave the ark with his family and the animals, and like Adam and Eve before them, be fruitful and multiply the earth. In worship, Noah built an altar to the Lord and offered a burnt offering from each clean animal. In response, the Lord declared, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many that came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." After this proclamation, God sighted the rainbow in the sky that would serve as a reminder of the covenant that he made with Noah that day. The covenant that God made with Noah illustrates several things about God. First, that he offers the proposal of covenant. Noah didn't ask for it. God offered it. Second, the offer of the covenant followed the action of obedience on Noah's part. Third, this covenant seemed to be unconditional, considering the Lord's use of the word never when he promised not to flood the earth again. Lastly, this covenant is accompanied by a symbol of God's promise, the rainbow. God's merciful and redemptive qualities are shown greatly during the interaction that he had with Noah. The covenant that the Lord made did not only affect Noah, but the future of humanity. This will become a theme in the covenants that the Lord makes with his people. The next covenant that we will discuss is the one that God made to Abraham. Abraham is a distinct figure in 3 major religions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. God's relationship with this man impacts a large amount of people, particularly because of the content of their covenant. Before he was Abraham, he was Abram. Abram settled in Haran with his family when God called him to leave his home. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and to him who dishonors you I will curse, and in all the families of the earth shall be blessed by you." After receiving this word from the Lord, Abram left his home in Haran with Lot and his wife Sarai to follow the voice of God. God continued to echo this promise of a great nation that would be built from Abram, but his airless state caused him to doubt. During a vision, Abram shared these concerns with the Lord, who gave him a sign for his covenant. And he brought him outside and said, "Look towards heaven and number the stars if you're able to number them." Then he said, "So shall be your offspring." When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I am the Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you may multiply greatly." The Lord asked Abram to give him a sign in return that signified acceptance of the covenant. He changed his name to Abraham and asked that he and the men of his kin take up the practice of circumcision. In order to receive the offer of the covenant, Abram had to exercise a certain level of obedience. For Noah, it was building an ark for a flood even though he had never seen rain. For Abraham, it was leaving his family to venture to a land with only the voice of God for a map. God repeats his promise several times to emphasize his unconditional nature to a doubting Abraham. "Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations." This covenant was not just an intimate gift from God to Abraham. Like the Noah covenant and the Abrahamic covenant, it was another tool that would benefit the rest of humanity. The last covenant that we will discuss is the Mosaic covenant, or the covenant between God and Moses. Believe it or not, the Mosaic covenant is actually a continuation of the Abrahamic covenant. The nation that was born of Abraham, Israel, found themselves enslaved to the Egyptians after finding refuge during the 7-year famine. Moses, the son of a Jew, was mistakenly adopted into the royal family. Upon discovering his identity, he ran off into a season of spiritual preparation. The Lord met him at a burning bush and commissioned him to free the people of Israel and take them to the promised land. "Now, therefore, you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant. You shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel." When Moses led the children of God into the wilderness, he met again with God, this time on Mount Sinai. Once there, the Lord downloaded the conditions of his covenant with the people of Israel in the form of the 10 Commandments. The tablets served as a sign, along with the continued tradition of circumcision of the men. These commandments helped to establish the Israelites as a consecrated missional vehicle to advance the kingdom of God. The Mosaic covenant was another tool that God used to not only benefit his people, but the future of all humanity. In conclusion, each covenant was a step towards preparing Israel to be the instrument in which God would set a plan of redemption into motion. Eventually, all the covenants lead to the new covenant found in the New Testament. It is Christ who brings the promises of all covenants into fruition. God used covenants in the Old Testament to showcase his glory and extend an invitation of relationship to all of mankind. He used each one to prepare his people for his complex plan of redemption. Then, he sent his son Jesus to fulfill the promises and bring salvation to all of the nations. "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declared the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother say, Know the Lord, for they will know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. Jeremiah 31:31 through 34.